I knew there had to be a big patch coming, and here it is, live on the PTR now. Overwatch finally has replays, the Jane leaks were true, and my assumption that there would be a big patch around the corner came true as well in the final hour, with multiple bunker comp heroes getting buffs. First things first though, replays. If you've used the Overwatch World Cup viewer when that came this past year, you probably know what to expect from this. However, there's a few extra things as well. Of course, allowing you to view your previous matches from any vantage point. Your own, your throwing teammates, anybody. Slow it down, speed it up, all that cool stuff that I'm incredibly excited to get into. It does note, and this is important, because a lot of people are confused about how the PTR works and are these things coming to console. Just like the workshop definitely came to console when the patch went live. Same thing for replays. It'll be on the PTR PC only for now, but come the next patch, you can expect it on all platforms. As it shows here, you'll be able to load your previous 10 most recent matches, but will only last for the duration of the current build of the game, the patch. If they update it, it's going to overwrite it, and at least for now, it's just the basic 10 most recent games. There's no options to save a replay or send it yet, but of course, a step in the right direction. A lot of neat features with this starting out, different ways to move the camera. I'll be really excited when they are able to send the VODs to someone else, as that really helps out on the coaching front. But that's it for replays. Now on to the big balance patch that's attempting to buff up Bunker to compete with Goats Comp. Here we got Baptiste, who increases his ammo capacity from 10 to 12, and his amplification matrix ultimate duration is increased from 8 seconds to 10 seconds. The developers say, given the dual nature of Baptiste's weapon, he ends up having to reload often. We're increasing the amount of ammo he has to work with so he can get more firing time while healing. Also, increasing the duration of amplification matrix will allow allies more time to get into position to make use of it. Yes, that's definitely true, but I think what's important to remember with both of these is that the overall output of these abilities goes up as well, because if you have the amp matrix up longer, it's possible to get more damage out of it. Now, technically, I think any damage you're putting into it should net in a kill, but having it up longer definitely helps in more ways than one. And same thing, if you don't have to reload as often, that means you'll have more opportunities to heal, which I think is important because Baptiste's offensive bullets feel like they last forever with 45, and 12 I still think is on the lower end. Next up, look out, D.Va mains. Her defense matrix has been reduced in length from 15 meters down to 10. Whopping difference. The devs say defense matrix is a very powerful defensive ability that can often feel oppressive from far away. Reducing the range on it will require D.Va to position herself more carefully to take advantage of its effects. As you guys know, if you watched my video from earlier today talking about Ana and abusing how hard D.Va is to play now, this top-down balancing for D.Va just keeps going on and on and on. She's going to be an incredibly hard hero for the devs to get right for everybody because she dominates the top level of play. Meanwhile, in ranked solo queue where there's no coordination really, despite defense matrix having infinite potential, it starts to wear thin quite quickly if you don't have execution with your teammates, and let's face it, you don't. Which isn't to say that she's a bad hero, she's just a lot harder to play in that context. Here looking on screen to get a visual representation of how long of distance 10 meters is from 15 in the training range. Each line on the floor is 10 meters apart, so you can imagine how much longer it used to go, but I think you can see this even more clearly as I go behind a teammate, simulating trying to, let's say, save them from a barrage or a pulse bomb or whatever. Just inching my way back ever so slightly puts me right at that 10-meter cap, and this nerf is just massive. Competitively speaking, I think the first hero everybody thinks about in pro play when you talk about D.Va is her relationship with Zarya, who now will have a much bigger leeway of distance control that she can utilize to sneak in a grab. If D.Va's too far away or her thrusters are down, you can kind of measure where she'll be able to reach, making it harder to position to be able to snag it to begin with. But I think the real winner in this is a whole bunch of DPS, especially characters that have any kind of mobility to be able to outplay the distance now that you can get on defense matrix. Much more punishing for D.Va to be just a meter or two out of position, and I think you're immediately going to notice this. I mean, just think about it. How many times is a Pharah barraging, but as D.Va, you're able to fly across the map, outstretch defense defense matrix to fully cover her and just deny the ultimate entirely. Well, now there's a big 5-meter window where you have more room to work with to drop the payload than you did before. And you only really need like a second of Pharah barrage to sneak in damage, so really big deal. Pharah, big winner in this. But almost as if Blizzard was worried about not having a direct answer to that, now McCree gets one of the most insane buffs we've ever seen. McCree's primary fire recovery has been reduced from half a second to 0.4 seconds. This sounds like a little number, but just take a look at how much faster these bullets are coming out. It feels amazing, and I think it's really important that we start to think about what damage thresholds this is going to affect. You always hear that term come up when these patches come in, thresholds. And what it means is, what can McCree kill now over the space of like 2 shots, 3 shots, 4 shots that he used to not be able to? I haven't done the math, I'd have to make a spreadsheet for it, but imagine at certain distances where a Pharah's getting pocketed, how difficult it can be as McCree to kill her. Well, now that you shoot faster, I'm sure that there's new windows and thresholds that have been created where McCree is able to kill Pharah through a mercy pocket. I'm almost positive about that. And if not that interaction, then other ones, ones with tanks. The devs explained this buff by saying, on average, McCree's damage output wasn't quite making up for the relatively low mobility or utility of his kit. Reducing his weapon's recovery time improves the potential for damage output without affecting the number of successful shots to kill an enemy. However, of course, shots to kill doesn't matter nearly as much as time to kill, and that's something that I think you're going to be immediately impressed by on this new patch. Not to mention, McCree's High Noon, that's another type of ultimate where D.Va might just be a meter or two out of the way to be able to block it for her entire team, or she blocks it for some of her team, but not all of them. I'm telling you, that D.Va Defense Matrix change is one of the biggest DPS buffs we've seen. Next up, Orisa Protective Barrier now can be deployed without interrupting reload. The devs say Orisa has one of the longest weapon reloads, and interrupting it to deploy a new barrier felt too disruptive to her gameplay. This change allows her to reload as needed while still being able to protect herself and her team. I think a lot of people who hate bunker comp do not want to see Orisa buffs. As a player who plays a lot of Orisa, I'll tell you, yeah, it felt terrible to have to choose, do I finish my reload so I can deal damage, or will my team die? Most of the time, you probably have to just drop that shield. Let's face it, your damage isn't as important as Orisa, but now you don't have to choose. Why can't we have both? Whip the memes out, boys and girls. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Orisa really needed buffs, but if they want to see goats die, well, I guess. Next up, Symmetra. Teleporter interact range increased from 1 meter to 1.5 meters. The devs say this is primarily a quality of life improvement, as it was possible to create a teleporter that Symmetra was unable to interact with unless she moved towards it. Okay, so what this means, where you're standing to deploy a tele, you'll be able to interact with it and use it without having to move towards it. And I'm surprised they only call this a quality of life fix, because this is a spherical buff. Well, almost. You don't go from underneath, obviously, but teammates who are trying to get into the teleporter now can use it from a further distance, which isn't a huge deal necessarily, but I definitely can think of times where you're doing an attack teleporter strat. It's a lot easier for everybody to hit the interact key at the same time, because they don't all have to be bundled up so close to hit it, or also making a quick escape with the teleporter. Again, I think this distance control stuff matters, and you'll be surprised when it does come into effect. Not the biggest buff in the world, but remember, we're making characters like Orisa and Baptiste better. Symmetra can play in that comp, so always be on the lookout for synergistic buffs sort of adding on top of each other. But speak of the devil, Jeff giveth, Jeff taketh away. Torbjorn's rivet gun secondary fire pellet damage is reduced from 12.5 to 10.5, now dealing 105 damage total per shot, which is a significant nerf because it used to do 125, so it's dropping 20 overall, which if you play a lot of Torb like I do, I think you'll be well acquainted to the limitations of the alternate fire, in that if you don't aim perfectly, or if the character simply is just too skinny of a hitbox, it can be very easy to not do enough damage to kill the thing in front of you. It's nowhere near as impactful as like a Reaper shotgun, and now that's lowered even more. The developers say that the combined damage output of Torbjorn's secondary fire with his overload ability was too high given his recent increased survivability. I mean, okay, this is fine. I think Torb's secondary fire is kind of cheese anyway. His primary is where the interesting gameplay is at, I think. So I personally do not mind this change. Now, there's been even more changes. This next one is really important. 2 CP B gets a nerf, now the time awarded for capturing point A on all assault maps has been reduced from 4 minutes to 3 minutes. And upon losing point A, any defenders that are dead or that die shortly thereafter will have a maximum respawn of 3.5 seconds. That's a really big deal. And I'm pretty sure this patch is going live with the Overwatch League Stage 3. It's a couple weeks away, it seems to line up, which means that snowballing from A to B will just no longer be a thing. Because as long as you die near or around the time that A gets capped, there's not this massive 10-second window where you're not able to rejoin the fight once it gets there on B. I already thought the speed boost nerf change helped thin that out a bit, but now even more so, you're nearly guaranteed a full 6 defending on B after A is captured. The developers say assault match lengths are averaging higher than we're happy with, particularly in competitive where there are multiple rounds. We're also concerned on how often offense fully captures point A and B, reducing the round time from 8 to 7 minutes should address both of these concerns, as less overall time rewards better defense. I mean, there's that, but there's also the granting a team a minute rule that kind of abuses this. However, I will say that does get knocked down heavily with this whole dying on A quick respawn that just comes into effect. The devs go on to say, additionally, some defenders fight late with good intentions at point A and end up staggering from their team when A falls, leaving their team with uneven footing to defend a rush to B. In these situations, temporarily lowering the respawn time to get those defenders back with their team should be a better match experience and doesn't punish players so harshly for wanting to defend point A. Interesting point. I think what might happen is that now, from almost never trying to defend point A because it's not worth it, you might as well save ults for B where you have a chance. It might go the other way where, hey, if you're going to give me basically a free fight, you should almost always just go take a fight and stall time or attempt to make a miracle happen on A, because for a lot of characters, the short respawn is faster than traveling from A to B. It'll be interesting to see if many more games are won on A once players really start to abuse this, because it's sort of a what do you got to lose type situation. You might as well go for a hero attempt, and we all know, all of a sudden our team knows how to play the game once they're forced to go like in overtime, right? Nothing happens till everyone's forced to press W. Well, this is another one of those psychological things that will have big plays just be made since players know they essentially have a free life. Onto the bug fixes now. There actually are ones that affect hero balance. Here, Ana, her anti-heal will be cleared when Sombra uses her translocator to teleport. Very important. I'm not sure why necessarily this had to be implemented. Sombra's already incredibly strong, and it's not like translocator is a recall like tracers, even if it is technically the same technology. Don't go crazy on me with the lore, all right? But also, the workshop got a buff, bunch of things added here. One thing that sticks out in my mind is increased maximum number of effects from 64 to 128. They just keep raising that to allow you to make more and more complicated games. And now, finally, the acknowledge command when pinged from the communication wheel can now target objectives. I never knew how people were able to do that. The only way you could before is if you bound the acknowledge key, but I'm not that cool. I'm an old man. I use a communication wheel just like I still use a numpad to send text messages. Smartphone, I'm still rocking a Motorola flip phone. All right, guys, that's everything for today's video. I hope you did enjoy it, and if you did, please be sure to leave it a like. It really helps us out. Lets us know that you're enjoying the content, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.